Ladies, if you were at Evie's and you took your black sweater and forgot it, she has it.
Yeah.
So pick it up from her today. Evie will be grateful. If nobody comes, she's going to auction it off next time. Okay? Yeah. I'm going to start with John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11 this morning. It seems like a strange thing to have for at Christmas time, but this is it. Okay. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied. "My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding between 20 and 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them up to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so. And the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink." What a surprise, huh? "But you have saved the best until now." What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed it. Taking some information from the book Just Give Me Jesus by Anna Graham Lotz, I want to just kind of walk you through this today, okay? Because I think there's a lot for us to think about and that we can learn from. First of all, John gave us an eyewitness account of this miracle. He was there, and he saw it, and he tells what he knew. He knew that Jesus had not yet exposed himself publicly to the people around. He was kind of veiling his deity. It's like almost having curtains over it. And yet he also had these guys with him. He had already picked up some disciples and was in process. And so as we look through this, the curtain opens just a little bit, and Christ's glory streams through. And we talk about the glory of God. This is interesting how that works. One of the interesting things about this, I think, is these curtains parted, that the first place this parted was at a wedding. And I think that's significant, especially in today's world. It was a man and woman getting married. Now that should be a surprise, shouldn't it? And so at the very beginning of his public ministry, he's invited to this wedding. And think about this now. If this is your wedding, okay? The one who makes God visible as man and is man comes to your wedding. The one who was with God at creation and who was God at creation is at your wedding. The one by whom and for whom and through whom everything was created is at your wedding. The one who hung the stars in space and sustains the universe today is at your wedding. The one who formed man and breathed his own life into it is at your wedding. The one who was the very incarnation of the glory of God and the grace of God was invited to your wedding. And so on the third day, the wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. What a wedding. Nobody knew who was there except Mary. She knew, and the disciples knew he was there, but they hadn't quite picked up on it yet. But they had just all they knew he was somebody to follow along because they'd seen him with John the Baptist and so on. So they were invited to the wedding, and so they go. And the interesting thing about this is that you have to put it in context, because in the time when the Romans came was a very dark time. There was very little cause for celebration because the Romans were cruel. They had hard taskmasters. They taxed the people. They controlled everything. And so a wedding was a time when they could celebrate and just have a great time. Now that's kind of interesting, as I read through this, that the wedding ceremony was in the evening. And after the ceremony, the people would take the bridegroom and his bride and march through the city, march through the towns. That celebration, and people would come up and give them blessings and appreciate them and so forth. As it went through the city, they would finally arrive at home. But instead of going on a honeymoon, they threw a big party, which may have lasted several days. This open house, several days of festival activities. And the bride and groom would entertain. This interesting is the bride group would entertain lavishly. And in that process of entertaining, they would be treated like a king and a queen. And their word was law, whatever they wanted would be honored. And so they had parties and dinners and all these things going on for all week. And it's during that time that Jesus and his mother arrive. And get there, are invited to, not necessarily arrive. And then, in this whole process, you had to have enough food and particularly enough wine for everybody, as much as they wanted, as long as they wanted. Now I don't know about you, when I got married, I'd only had $90, I think. I go way out into my or anything like that. But this time, when his mother is there, this big crisis occurs, which you know of. They ran out of wine. The wine was almost gone. Almost gone. And I want to kind of just take a peek back. I mean, this is what Ann did, and I think it's so well done that I'm going to just share it with you because I think it helps you to see this whole process on how God works and how God answers things, answers prayers and things. If they run out of wine, what could happen? Well, why is it such a crisis? Let me tell you why. I didn't think about this first. It was an embarrassment. It was extremely rude to run out. It was considered rudeness. You know, everybody's going to have too much money, they're going to think that's really rude, right? Yeah. Second, it would cause the bridegroom and his bride humiliation, which they would have to deal with all their life. No, that's the thing in our life, how things go. Never forget it. Never let it go. Never forget it. It could actually open up a lawsuit against the bridegroom and the bride's family, because they embarrassed him. And at the very least, it would be a rocky start to the marriage. Because they would lose respect for the bride. So this was a marriage in trouble almost from the minute it started. And so the question then is that Ann put, and I thought this is how did they discover that they were running out of wine? What happened in that whole situation? And it looks like there was a celebration room, and there was a room where they do all the fixings and things. And they had servants there. And she gave us some 5 questions about this. So let me read these questions to you, because I think this is good. Question number 1. Give us right to read. Did one of the waiters search the kitchen in vain for another jug from which to refill his pitcher, only to find them all empty? Then he slipped purposefully back into the banquet hall, urgently whispering the news into the ears of his fellow servants. We're out of wine. We're running out. Did the servants stiffen with shock, turn white with dread, and then redden as their faces flushed in humiliation at the soon to be obvious? How would they handle the angry guests who would demand that they be served more wine? And there was were their eyes fearfully riveted on the guests as the cups were raised and toasts were made and sips were taken and they ooh. And I think about that. I had to go back and when Judy's sister's daughter was married, we went to this wedding, outdoor wedding. There were a lot of people. And the bride's party got delayed. They were at a hotel, they went down, the car was, and they were delayed. And so they were serving these drinks. An open bar thing, I think. And I just was sitting there, and I thought, and I heard them say, "You've already used up that $1,000 you gave us for the drinks." And I thought, wow, that was a lot of money. And, well, just keep going, he said. Because I just heard him say, just keep going. But it would have been embarrassing to all of a sudden get water. That's probably what would have happened. Unknown to the servants. Now Mary is the mother of Jesus, has already heard, she already knew about this shortage. How did she find out? And how did she become aware of the crisis that only the servants knew? Now there's some speculation. Is it possible that the marriage feast was for one of her children? She was, or was she the event hostess? Why was it that Jesus and his disciples were invited to this wedding? And why did she get involved in taking the initiative to find the solution to this problem? Those are all questions which the scripture doesn't tell us. And the thing is that if she was involved because it was her family's crisis, because it was part of the family, and that could have been very well. It doesn't have to be necessarily the children. It could have been her sister or somebody else. It makes sense the way she responded. Even more remarkable, because she learned about the crisis. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She didn't send somebody out for more wine. What did she do? She immediately went to Jesus and told him what was wrong. So then the question comes up, why did she go immediately to Jesus? Because he could do something about it. Okay. Well, maybe she'd been accustomed for years to turning to him for crisis. Joseph's not mentioned anymore. The thinking is that Joseph had died, and Jesus became the oldest son, the head of the family. And that he was used to handling situations. Now remember, they had a lot of younger siblings. Okay. Well, don't get ahead of me here. It doesn't matter whether it was a small problem or a public problem or a private one or an obvious one or a spiritual fact, whatever. He was there to help with deal with the problems. And nothing is said of Joseph. And so because of that, it's possible that he had first-hand knowledge of the needs of the family. And Mary, having years of experience of working with him and raising him, how would you have liked to have been the mother of Jesus? Perfect child. Would you like to be the brother of Jesus? Now, I get a lot of kids where I get the older kid, then the next kid, then the next kid, then the next kid. And sometimes they have a little issue with the older child, particularly if the older child is really a student. And sometimes the second one is hard to get along with. But so he says, this whole thing, he goes to her, she goes to him and says, "They have no more wine." She doesn't tell him what to do. They just have no more wine. And, and here's, Anne put this kind of conversation going between Jesus and her. So let me just read this. I think this kind of fills it in here. Mary says, "Jesus, you've gathered some terrific, tough, thoughtful young men around you. With a mother's intuition, I know you're getting ready to make your move. After all these years, you're finally going to reveal yourself and declare who you are. You're not Joseph's son, you are God's son. You are Israel's long-awaited Messiah. And Jesus, I think this wedding celebration would be, in the presence of so many friends, would be a wonderful place to begin letting people know who you are. So do something about the wine." Jesus says, "Ma'am, search your heart. What's your real reason for asking me to help this young man? Are you trying to manipulate me into performing a miracle so that your friends will know what you already know, that I'm not only your son, but also God's son? The timing and agenda for my public ministry have been set by God. I cannot run ahead of him or allow myself to be pushed ahead of him. even by my own brother. Interesting. So the question is then, are there hidden agendas in your prayers? In my prayer. Why do you involve me, Jesus said? And why does it challenge us to do that? Are there hidden motives in our intercessions for others or for ourselves? What are we really asking for? In many of our requests, if we listen to ourselves, many times it's kind of selfishness. Listen to our own prayers. But Jesus understands the feeling of our infirmities. Remember, in Hebrews 4:15, he says, we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are. Yet he did not sin. He knows how hard it is to feel sick all the time. He knows all about our needs. And glorifying God should be our bottom line agenda. In John 17, he says, after Jesus said this, he looked toward heaven and prayed, Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, that your Son may glorify you. I have brought you glory on earth by finishing the work you gave me to do. That his whole purpose to go there. We give glory to God. Well, regardless of her agenda, it's obvious that she went to Jesus for help. And she may not have understood the potential destruction of the marriage, but she's pretty sharp. She knew Jesus, she knew the details of his life. He knows the details of our lives. He knows. He knows when we have spiritual needs. He knows when we have physical needs. He knows when we have financial needs, emotional needs, intimate personal things. He knows them. So, going back to the story, after speaking with Jesus, Mary calls the servants together. What does she say to them? Well, whatever he tells you, do it. And Anne says, well, I would imagine that those servants were already exchanging knowing looks, rolling their eyes, shaking their heads, and they listen to her instruction. To whatever he says, do it. She was so confident that he could make a difference that she didn't try to tell him. She put that whole situation under his authority. How many times have I, I think by myself, the situations have come up, and I want to deal with it myself when I needed to give it to Jesus. And it's one of the things I'm trying to learn, is to give those situations to them first, before I mess it up. So have you placed your life under his authority? Given him your absolute authority over whatever happens in your life? Knowing Jesus is more than just being saved, more than just being born again. It involves an intimate personal relationship with him. Through prayer, getting answers to prayer, Bible study, applying that Bible to our law, to our lives, through obedience, experiencing his power. Moment by moment, submission to him gives us moment to moment filling of the Holy Spirit. I'm working on that. But the key is knowing him. Get to know him, spend more time with him, grow in your personal relationship with him, and concentrate on obeying his instructions immediately. So, let's get back to the wine. When the shortage of wine first became known, it seemed on the surface that Jesus was not going to do anything. Woman, why are you talking to me? She says, basically. Yeah, Mary knows him well enough. She didn't even answer that. You can look in there. She just said, servants, whatever he says, go ahead and do it. And I'm sure they're thinking, I don't know about this. But they didn't have to wait very long. All of a sudden, he says, hey, you see those stone jars over there? 20 gallons apiece. There's 6 of them. That's a lot of water. They used that water for washing the feet of the people when they came in. They'd use it for everything. Now, it doesn't. My immediate thinking was this: how does that water stay clean? And I realized they probably just took a dipper out or something. I thought my first minute, how did that happen? Anyway, let's go on. So, he goes to him. He says, hey, go see those things, fill them up with water, with some water. Then the thought came, where do they get the water? They just turn on the faucet. They had to get it from a well somewhere, or a cistern, okay? So they filled it up to the brim, almost ready to flow over. So, fill the jars with water. They did it. Now, think about the servants. What do you think they're thinking as they fill the jars up with water? That would have seemed illogical, impractical. You mean we're going to serve water instead of wine? And so they're used to taking orders, but there's something about this man who has the authority, so they just kind of do what he says. And what do you think is going on? So he says, now, take some out and take it to the master of the banquet. Can you imagine the look on their face? Particularly the chief waiter. He's trying I've got to go give this water to the master of the banquet, and know what's going to happen? He's going to fire me. I'm going to lose my job. We're going to be embarrassed. You know how embarrassing that's going to be? At the very least, I'll probably be reprimanded for it. What do you think me for? I'm just a servant, but I'm not a fool. What has been running through your mind in response to instructions Jesus has given you? What is that? What happens when you just do what he says? So, did the servants obey? What did they do? They just did what he said, right? Now, what was it that caused that? Was it his clear, firm gaze of authority? Now, remember, they didn't know that he's the Son of God. Quiet confidence, the unwavering strength, the compassion that comes through it. What made them not drag their feet, but just go ahead and do it right away? Because he couldn't wait very long, but he was an hour one, remember? And somebody's going to be calling for it, Pastor today, pretty soon. So, and I want to read this part. I love this part. It says, I'll take the pitcher up to the master. And I'm not liking the idea, you know. So imagine all the servants crowded into the doorway between the kitchen to the banquet hall, jostling for position to each other to get an unobstructed view of their co-worker as he makes his way gingerly through the guests to the master of the banquet. They must have held their breath as he carefully poured the liquid from the pitcher into the glass. I'm thinking about him. I wonder as he begins to pour if his hand jerked, spilling a few drops when he saw that although he just put water into the pitcher, wine came out. Was he staring stupefied as the master of the banquet gave him a quizzical look? And then he reached out to wrap his fingers around the glass and feel it tasted. Instead of the water that had been turned into wine, the master of the banquet did not realize where it come from. Though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the servant must have been shocked. He stood there in amazement as he overheard the master of the banquet as he called the bridegroom aside and said, everyone else brings out the choice wine first and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you save the best until now. There it is. The water been turned into wine, not just wine, but the very best. As the servant weaved his way back through the tables to the kitchen, was he greeted with high fives from the other servants? What a spontaneous celebration. It had been a miracle. There's no way that water could have turned into wine. It had to have been created, but it was a quiet. God does quiet things sometimes. Nothing flashy, nothing spectacular that said the Messiah's here, da 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 da, the whole jar lit up. No, nothing of that. Just very quietly, who knew? The disciples knew because they were there. Mary knew. The servants knew. But the people at the wedding had no clue. What might change? This change had saved this bridegroom and his bride. Almost terrible things that would have happened to their marriage. And I think it's interesting to think about this first miracle emphasized the importance that Jesus put on a marriage. No matter what anybody else says, no matter whatever our culture says, a marriage between one man and one woman this just hits him from Jesus' point of view. Here, no one in the crowd knew what happened. But you know, as the servants obeyed Christ and listened to what he said and trusted his authority and listened to the prayer, he gives us that opportunity to enjoy the new life in Jesus. I think one of the greatest things about being a Christian is you don't have to live the old life. You were just talking about that a minute ago with your friend that changed his life from the cusser to the I don't want to be cussed at. Isn't that interesting how God will just take things and make it new, make our lives new? That's Scripture says. Really fine. You're not happy with your life? Get under the authority of Jesus. Then you have the newness of life. Well, I think the best thing we can ever sing is Silent Night. So let's do that. That's on page 35. Yes, sir. Okay. Ted says, this is where the Catholics gets the idea of going to Mary because Mary will go to Jesus on your behalf. Is that right? Did I say it right? It's nice to have Ted back. He's been gone for a while, was sick for a while, and moved. And what page did I say? Thank you. I know the song, but I can't find the page. All right, let's stand up. Ready? Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Second verse. Silent night, holy night, shepherds wake at the sign, glory stream from heaven afar, heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. Third verse. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from thy holy face, with the dawn of redeeming grace. Jesus, Lord, at thy birth, Jesus, Lord, at thy birth. Let's pray. Thank you, Father, for loving us so much that you would send your Son to die on the cross for us. As we remember this time when he came as a baby, because he is now man. And so now because he's man, we can see who you are, as we see God through Jesus. So thank you for that. We might ask your guidance and blessing on our time. In Jesus' name.